In the far east of Asia lies a legendary land, Mongolia. Here, over millions of years, powerful forces have forged some of the most dramatic landscapes on Earth. From one of the continent's hottest deserts to towering mountain worlds and the vastest grassland that has ever existed. It takes a special breed with bold ambition and a pioneering spirit to tame this fabled place and call it home. The largest grassland on Earth. One of the last true wildernesses. The immense Eurasian steppe stretches almost 1/5 of the way around our planet. A harsh place with severe winters and ferocious summers. A cycle of abundance, destruction, and rebirth that affects every creature who lives here. With just over 3 million inhabitants, Mongolia is one of the most sparsely populated countries in the world. These are vast open plains, immense spaces. But any feeling of emptiness is an illusion. It is full of unique and surprising creatures, and is the scene for some of the biggest migrations on Earth. The upper reaches of the steppe are on the same latitude as Paris. But in winter, it's one of the most bitter and hostile places on the planet. The cold wind blowing from Russia regularly brings temperatures 40 degrees below zero. And they often bring with them snowstorms. Prehistoric shapes emerge from the whiteout. Przewalski horses. These are the last true wild horses on Earth. They are hardy animals, but this herd is fighting a losing battle against the blizzard. They need to find cover, and quickly. Knowing where to go takes great wisdom and experience. The eldest female is the leader of the herd. She's taking them down a trail she knows could save them. Relief at last. She's guided them to a narrow valley where they are sheltered from the wind. But even down here, it's bitterly cold. The horse's thick coat can only insulate them to a degree. So they must have another way to conserve energy. They huddle together, maximizing their barrier against the biting cold, and wait for the storm to pass. For Przewalski horses, it takes teamwork and tenacity to survive in these inhospitable lands. The next day, several hundred tons of snow now cover the herd's territory. Their only food now lies buried beneath 60 centimeters of snow. Pushing through thick drift is hard work, and the horses are getting weaker. Their only reward is a mouthful of withered grass. This male seems to have given up. But the magpies won't let him rest. Although it looks as if they're provoking him, they are in fact picking off his parasites. For the magpies, the horses are like walking larders. While this is good for the horses, it's causing some irritation. Przewalski's horses live in small family groups that consist of a stallion, a few mares, and their foals. The young are almost weaned, but they still go to mum for comfort. This stallion always stays at the back of the herd to keep an eye on his mares. He knows there are other stallions nearby. His stance signals that he's not to be messed with. But in looking for food, the mares have wandered into a neighboring herd. Another male. Recognizable by his battle-worn, stumpy tail, he is the mightiest stallion in the valley. He barges in, trying his luck. But our stallion doesn't need to worry. A clear slap of the tail signals that the mares have no interest in jumping ship, yet. Message received, at least for now. Stallions have a few more months to fight over the females before they are ready to mate. Winter is slowly releasing its grip. Warmer winds arrive from the south, and within a few short weeks, the steppe starts transforming. The receding ice and snow reveals an immense flat plain. As the temperature rises, the melting snow provides vital moisture for a single, remarkable type of plant: grass. Grasslands exist wherever there is little rain, but not enough to sustain forests. Given the right conditions, grasses have the extraordinary power to grow from first shoots to flower in a matter of days. The steppe is magically transformed. At last, there is color, and the chance for new life. Mongolian gazelles. More than 1 million are thought to live here, chasing the green grass. Most of the time, these nomads are scattered over the steppe. But once a year, they come together to give birth to their young. Most of the babies are born within just a 4-day window. Until they can stand, the babies must stay hidden in the grass. They should be safe, as long as they stay still. There are enough pairs of eyes to keep a watch. But the clock is ticking, and the herd will soon be moving on in its search for new grass. Their lanky legs are a sign that they are built for life on the move. These babies will now start the nomadic lifestyle that they share with most animals on the steppe. Not before they're suddenly stopped. A fire. Panic spreads through the herd. With nothing standing in its way, the fire propagates devastatingly fast. Thankfully, Mongolian gazelles are born to run. Speeding at more than 60 kilometers an hour, most outrun the fire. Not all have made it. And for the survivors, the fire has turned their precious grassland to ash. But the grasses are not dead. Their underground stems are unharmed, and they will soon regrow. At only a few days old, these gazelles have started a journey that will last their whole lives, forever chasing the grass on which they depend. But the steppe isn't only the stage for these immense gatherings. It also caters for the smallest of creatures. For the animals living within grasses, such as this female harvest mouse, they are as big and tall as a rainforest. Climbing grass is a lot more difficult than climbing trees. The shoots just won't stay still. Her prehensile tail acts like a fifth limb. So she is as agile on a blade of grass as a monkey climbing in the trees. She is carefully selecting grass blades, each trimmed to the correct length. Together with her mate, they are creating something very special. It's a tough bit of gardening, but worth it. Grasses are the ideal place to build a miniature treehouse, fit for a harvest mouse. It's a centerpiece, one of the most intricate structures in the animal kingdom. And it's ready for some very important arrivals. There are now new mouths to feed. These babies need to grow up fast. if they want to take advantage of the grasses while they are still there. But it's not only the grasses that provide a home. In the northernmost part of Mongolia lies the most surprising habitat, completely unrecognizable from the rest of the country. Forests. Larch and pine cover the shallow hills. The northern Mongolian forests are a crossroad for seasonal visitors and Arctic specialists. But they are so much more. These forests are part of the taiga, an immense belt of forests that stretches through several countries and covers over 10 million square kilometers, containing 1/3 of all the trees on Earth. It's an ideal place to hide for some very secretive creatures. A family of wild boar and their young piglets. Wild boar are thought to have one of the largest distributions on the planet. They are the ancestors of most domestic pig species. For them, food is there for the taking. It's just a matter of finding it. To survive, they follow their nose, among the best in the natural world. They will eat almost anything they unearth. But they particularly love roots and nuts. The piglets start imitating the adults at a very young age. Even if, for now, they are mostly getting in the way. The stripes are a good camouflage in the dappled light of the forest. They will lose them at around 3 months, when they are old enough to find food on their own. Wild boar are social animals, sometimes gathering together in groups of several dozen individuals. Staying together may make it easier to find food, but there is another reason for group living. More ears to listen out for danger. Wolves. They're coming back under the cover of the trees after a night of hunting. Wolves have to roam long distances in search of food to sustain their families. The grey wolf range extends the whole width across the Eurasian continent. But the threat of being shot is forcing wolves to retreat to the trees to raise their families. These cubs are now 4 weeks old. They have made it out of the den for the first time. Having lived in near complete darkness until now, their little eyes are just getting used to the light and to the numerous obstacles around the den. They are growing quickly and are always hungry. Their mother will soon start going back out to hunt and disappear for several hours every day, so they need to get their fill, and fast. they will entirely depend on every adult member of this pack for another 5 months, until they can make themselves useful on a hunt. But the wolves' prey are being overhunted, and it is a struggle to feed the whole family. Only half of these grey wolf pups will survive to adulthood. The vast Eurasian steppe. It extends some 8,000 kilometers. From Romania, through Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan, China, and Mongolia. This huge belt of grassland is bounded in the north by the forests of Russia, and in the south, the land becomes increasingly dry, fading into deserts like the Gobi. But it isn't a continuous band. Huge mountain ranges dissect it throughout its range. And the Altai Mountains split it in two. The eastern side of the steppe envelops Mongolia, and it is a land of extremes. Summer temperatures can soar to 40 degrees Celsius, while in the winter, temperatures can plunge to 45 below zero. It's a tough place to survive, but it can also be an oasis for some species found nowhere else on Earth. Summer is here. And there are new arrivals on the steppe. After almost a year of pregnancy, one of the Przewalski mares has had a foal. At only a few days old, he stays near Mum for security, but will very soon pluck up the courage to explore his surroundings, unless he abandons himself to his favorite hobby. But this foal must stay vigilant. His mother will come into season again very soon. She'll attract testosterone-fueled stallions that could trample him without a second look, not knowing that he is in fact a very precious offspring. Intensive hunting and overgrazed pastures drove Przewalski's horses to the brink of extinction in the 1960s. But they were saved from disappearing completely just before it was too late. Captive bred populations were released onto the steppe, and they are now thriving. It's one of the most successful reintroductions in conservation history. Mother and foal are part of a 7-strong band, always on the move, searching for food and water. Now, in the summer, fresh grass is hard to find, and it doesn't provide enough moisture for the horses. So this herd needs its elders to guide them to the remaining pools of standing water. This knowledge is essential to the herd's survival. Once they've had their fill, it's time for a little grooming. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Not only does it feel good and reinforces friendships, it could even be the beginning of a love story. With their ancient origins and miraculous recovery, Przewalski horses are the ultimate symbol of hope on these vast plains. As Mongolia's dry season takes hold, food becomes increasingly thin on the ground in the Eurasian steppe. It's bad news for one of the most iconic and endangered animals of the steppe, whose entire existence revolves around grass. The saiga antelope. Saigas live in some of the harshest climates in the world, often migrating long distances between summer and winter pastures. At the end of the summer, the grasses on which they feed become so dry that they also need to cover a lot of ground every day to visit fresh water sources. The saiga's unique physiology is ideally suited to the steppe. This bizarrely shaped nose helps them filter out the dust whipped up by the wind in the sweltering heat. The wobbly appendage is also very useful in the winter, as it warms up the cold air before it enters the lungs. But it really gets in the way of drinking. The saigas aren't the only ones here. This female marsh harrier has taken a break from hunting to get a drink. For a short moment, she is no threat to the smallest of visitors. Everybody has learned to share this precious resource. These saigas have taken to the deepest part of the river. The water is fresher there, and it's also easier to keep out of reach of predators. Saigas are naturally nervous. And easily startled. But luckily, faster than a racehorse. This time, only a very thirsty young fox. It's clear she hasn't eaten for days, but would only be a danger for the saiga's young. Crisis averted. But the saigas are right to be nervous. The night may bring out much larger predators than this harmless fox. The cover of darkness also allows for some tiny creatures to make a discreet appearance. These are steppe lemmings, the smallest lemmings in the world, barely heavier than a AA battery. These energetic rodents are constantly looking for seeds and roots. Steppe lemmings live in small groups, consisting of a female, a male, and their last offspring. They seldom come out in the open. It's a dangerous world. But there is safety in numbers. More eyes and ears on lookout. Any unusual sound or movement, and everybody disappears. Underground. The family scamper down along extensive runway systems that they have dug out. Even in the complete darkness, they know exactly where to go. They have warm nests and chambers in their burrows that they line with soft grasses. But there is no time to hibernate. They will continue feeding on every bit of plant they can get their paws on over winter. Come spring, if the conditions are right and there is plenty of food, this pair will start breeding again and could have up to 6 litters in 1 year. This is how lemming populations can boom so dramatically from one year to the other. Ultimately, life on the steppe depends on the turn of the seasons and what resources it brings to animals as small but ingenious as the lemmings. Daybreak on Mongolia's steppe. Across the Asian grasslands, animals wake up to the buzzing of the last summer insects. The saiga, a relic of the Ice Age. They once roamed across Europe and North America, alongside mammoths and saber-toothed cats. But these antelope have had a catastrophic population decline over the last few years. Since the early 1990s, over 95% of the saiga population has disappeared. They hold the sad record of being one of the fastest declining mammals in the world. They once roamed the steppe in their millions, but they now only remain in small pockets of grasslands in Russia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Mongolia. They are incredibly tough survivors, but in this intense heat, they favor a gentle pace. A male saiga. Recognizable by his red horns. They are translucent, so colored by the blood running through them. It's not quite the mating season yet, but he's keeping an eye on the other males approaching his harem. If the subtle signs don't work, then they are put back in their place the hard way. And it isn't just him. Tempers are flaring all around the water. Males need to make the most of it. Many of them will only breed once. They live life in the fast lane. With the water source dwindling, it is time for these saigas to move on. Despite having made it through the ages, saigas are vulnerable and could soon become a distant memory if their habitat isn't protected for future generations. The Mongolian steppe is a delicate yet surprising environment. There is a lot more to these grasslands than first meets the eye. It is a scarred landscape, forged by an active geological past. Canyons. They lacerate the steppe, but bring an essential lifeline through the rivers that erode them. The steppe is also home to some ancient volcanoes. Surrounded by its lava field and rising up to 2,200 meters, the famous Horgo-Ul crater dominates this landscape. At 200 meters wide and about half as deep, it's an almost perfect cone. This extinct volcano's last known eruption was 8,000 years ago, and it was the last ever active volcano in Mongolia. But its destructive influence can still be seen all around it. Poplar trees struggle to grow among the boulders of basalt rock. They are symbols of how life thrives in Mongolia, no matter how harsh the conditions. It's the beginning of winter on one of the highest plains of Mongolia, Arhangai. Even now, life is hard and the air thin. By mid-November, the hills are blanketed in snow and it's already bitterly cold. Like almost everywhere in Mongolia, the unforgiving climate forces wildlife and people to keep moving, to find enough to survive. Despite Arhangai's harsh conditions, grass survives here in sufficient quantities to support the highest of grazers, who sometimes travel several kilometers in one day looking for food. The yak. With altitudes in Arhangai reaching almost 3,700 meters, yaks are highly valued here. They can use pastures that cannot be reached by any other livestock. They are well adjusted to the hardships of this terrain. Their coat is thick, and they have a very low number of sweat glands, which helps conserve body heat. Yaks are the 4x4 of the animal world. Their legs are short, and their broad hooves make them perfectly adapted to walking through the snow. These are descendants of the wild yak, a fearsome and aggressive creature that originated in the Himalayas. With their calves, though, they are the most tender of mums. These calves are only 6 months old, but they are already as hardy as their parents. They too will have to learn to survive in the most hostile of environments. Once domesticated, the yak is the most useful of livestock, providing their owners with transport, food, wool for clothes and tents, and manure for fuel. One family has set up camp in this valley for the winter. Ixchela and her daughter, Antuks, are here to graze their yaks on the meager pickings of the Arhangai province. It's time for the yaks to be herded back to camp for the night. She's only 16 years old, but one day Antuks might take over the farm. So she needs to learn how to round up the animals. But yaks are stubborn. Often, they are the ones dictating which path to take. And sometimes, they also decide on the destination. Antuks needs to look confident. Otherwise, the yaks won't hesitate to take over. But the work doesn't end there. It's early morning. Back at camp, the yak cows need to be milked. They've been separated from their calves overnight, so there's plenty to collect. The yak's delicate nature means that they tend to only tolerate one person milking them. So Antuks can't take on this burden. A yak cow is brought through and her legs are temporarily tied, so she doesn't even think of kicking. Antuks knows exactly which calf to release. He's allowed to suckle for only a moment to stimulate the milk. The long skirt of hair makes it impossible to see, so Ixchela needs to be very intuitive. She knows every cow's quirks and sensitivities. One wrong move, and the animal could send her bucket flying. The trick is to be quick and confident. The cows are incredibly impatient. Ixchela will take half of the milk the cows produce. The rest is for the calves. Yak milk is one of the creamiest of all. At this time of year, it can be up to 12% fat. It's a vital resource that the yaks herders completely depend on in these remote lands. Yaks have made living here possible. It's unlikely that humans would have survived in these high plateaus without this formidable creature. The steppe, an infinite grassland, a place of feast and famine, where the seasons run fast and furious. At its peak, the steppe provides the stage for one of the greatest gatherings of wildlife found anywhere on Earth. And is home to some of the hardiest animals on the planet. The creatures who, against all odds, have made a living in this hostile landscape. But this magical land is under threat. The steppe's unique wildlife now has to coexist with an ever-increasing livestock. Overgrazing and climate change are continuously degrading the grasslands, driving its grass specialists to ever-shrinking pockets of land. But all is not lost. Some have made incredible recoveries. And have become the ultimate symbol of hope. For this hugely precious environment.